like we're live.
Yeah, we're good to go, Brian.
Okay. Well, I want to welcome everybody to the November 2nd meeting of the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee. My clock says it's 2:31. We begin this gathering by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous peoples. Just before we get the meeting started, I just wanted to mention, in case any of you hadn't seen it, because we didn't have a meeting in October, that Rob DeWolf had passed away on Thanksgiving Day, October 9th, at the age of 75. I believe, James, you've extended sympathies to the family, but I just wanted to mention it anyway and to say that, he was one term on the permits committee for 4 years, and he's been with the museum on their board for a while. So he's done his bit for the city. So just
Oh,
wanted
that's
to
a
acknowledge
shock,
that.
Brian. Was he ill or?
Well, he'd been in the hospital since the spring, I believe, and
Oh,
not in the best of health. He was 75 years old. So yeah, he's not with us any longer.
That's too young.
I know. Tell me.
I agree.
I plan on living to be 117, so there you go. Anyway, additions and deletions to the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions aside from what you've noted?
Yeah, so we're gonna have two additions, both involving Adrian Petrie, who's going to join us. He's not in the meeting quite yet, but I'm going to message him when we're ready for him. One is just an update about the photos for the Insight program. He has those ready, so he's going to show those to everybody. And then Gail had a couple little questions about some downtown signage that's being replaced, and he was involved in that program. So if there's any further questions or anything, he'll be able to respond to those. So we'll tack those on to the end of 7.3 and 0.4.
Okay.
I guess we need a motion to approve the amended agenda.
I'll do it.
John Crawley, thank you. And all in favor? Okay, thanks, done.
Excuse me, James, it's Holly Washuta. I just can't get my video started, but I can see everybody and hear everybody.
Okay, thanks for letting us know.
Here.
If you do have any questions throughout the meeting, just speak up and let us know, and we'll make sure that we get
Thank
to
you. I don't know what the problem is, but thank you.
Hi, Holly.
Hi there.
I guess we move on now to consider the minutes of the previous meeting from September the 28th. Does anybody have any questions, comments, changes about the minutes? No typos. Oh, Lorraine.
There's a type. Oh, there's a typo in. I think it's number 7. The third paragraph, a line, the one that starts with my name.
Okay.
I'll fix that.
Do you have any other comments, questions about the minutes? And seeing none, then I guess we need a motion to adopt the amended minutes of September 28th. Anybody?
Yeah, sure.
John, thank you. And all in favor? Okay, done. Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations to be made? And I'm not seeing any, so I guess we can dispense with that item. So moving on to item 7.1, 15 Deluzzi. This is for an addition and alteration to the house. So Dave and Lou, I'll turn the floor over to you and you can razzle dazzle us.
Perfect. Thank you. So first off, thanks for making the time today. So I'm Dave Kavesic. I'm the homeowner, and this is Lou Malone. He's the architect designer. Just so you know who's who here. And James, do you want me just to kind of walk through this PowerPoint a little bit?
Yeah, so I have the obviously picture of the house that you provided, and the plans are up as well. So just if you want to just describe what you see on the screen, then we'll be in good shape.
Wonderful. So Lou, I'll just go through, and then and anything designy, architectural, Lou will chime in and answer any questions you have from a technical perspective. So my family and I are from St. Catharines originally, and as a kid, we live in Burlington currently, but we have properties in St. Catharines, and we've always loved Port Dalhousie in particular, and frankly thought we'd never own anything there just because the market kind of took off on us. So when this cottage came up, we bought it immediately, and we bought it for our family and for our purposes because my wife Isabella and our families are still all in St. Catharines, and Port Dalhousie is a destination where we will go often for dinner and to walk on the beach and that kind of thing. So this is absolutely, this property is for us and my wife and my 3 kids to enjoy. And our mission on this cottage is to turn it into a 100-year home. So to do everything correctly, make it livable and safe. And so that's what you're going to see today, to make sure that we can be there for 100 years so my kids can be there after we're done and enjoy it like a home. And that's what we're doing here. What we're proposing is basically to honor what's already there, but just add a little bit of frontage and just so we can make it a little more livable, to put a kitchen in, and to include a porch, which is a must for my wife. After walking around and seeing all the other homes in the area, she loves the idea of having morning coffee on that porch and feeling the kind of the lake breeze and the sun on her face and that kind of thing. So a very traditional porch as well. So that's basically the gist of that, and all the original windows there just to kind of let the sun in. So the idea is this is going to be a nautical themed cottage / house that's giving honoring what's already there in the neighborhood and with the original cottage. And basically what you're seeing in these blocked out areas is the addition, and then to the right is the little bit of an addition, and to the left is where the porch will be, kind of to make it flush, just for aesthetic purposes. And one thing I will say, if like where it is right now, our neighbor to the left, this will be in line with them. So the house won't jut out any further than them. And the neighbor to the right of us is actually right on the street. So this will fit in nicely with the neighborhood. And we still have 45-foot clearance inner. I don't want to, but I think it's about 45 feet. So there's tons of room in the front yard, because everything we're proposing, we want it to fit with the neighborhood, and not stand out. Are there any questions at this point, or will you guys just raise your hands?
I think, Dave, what we'll do is we'll just have you run through everything, and then we'll do questions at the end. So I'll jump forward to this image that you provided of the porch changes. If you want to speak to maybe the roof or anything like that you're incorporating, the design.
Absolutely. So the existing roof, this is essentially a 97-year-old, give or take, cottage. The roof reflects that. It's low and not in good condition. So we're proposing to replace the roof with the same kind of roof type. It's the same style roof. It's got a gabled roof and then like the side roof as well. So it's a very similar style, but just a new roof that's going to be safer and give a little more height that makes it a little more livable, but still in line with our neighbors and the other homes. So this is not going to be higher than anybody else. So we're proposing that. I will say the little detail in the front there, that's it actually be more circular and more like a little nautical window, to honor what's already there. And I will say there's going to be like a little triangular piece that goes there to kind of recreate that, to create a little more kind of oomph on the heritage side. So it'll be a gabled roof, but with that little circular window where that rectangular vent is. That's just a vent, by the way, just a functional vent. But we do like the idea of having that little circle, the little circle there as well. And the circle plays to what our neighbors have got going on as well, and it's more of a nautical theme as well. So that's what we're proposing with the roof, and then the gabling, the gabled roof will just come forward, and then the porch will be under that. Much to what you'll see lower on with that White House, James, that's about 6 or 7 houses down. It's very similar to that. You see how the gabled roof comes forward and then the porch is underneath. That's essentially what we're going to do without that extra roof detail there. It's going to be closer to the bigger piece with the board and batten, and also cedar shank or cedar shingle look. Is that the detail you're looking for, James?
Yeah, you've provided some photos of the interior. If you want to explain kind of some of the work you're doing inside, just to tell them about the space and whatnot inside, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we opened it up to see what we were dealing with, and frankly, to get that insulation and the nastiness of 100-year-old build out of there. And so those interior walls are about 7 feet 1 inch and 2 inches in places. So essentially a 7-foot roof. We want to build that to like 9-foot interior roof, just to give us livability and kind of build it out to building standards. And also the interior studs there are 2x4s. We're going to just marry whatever the building guys say, but it's probably a 2x6 to those, so that we have
a 2x6 sister to the 2x4.
Yeah, so that we can insulate it correctly with the appropriate R value insulation to bring it to current standards. And then the new roof would go on top of those studs. But basically the same footprint, just kind of built up to make it livable and safe to build current build standards. That's just a picture of the way, the way they built these cottages back in the day. I know that they would use whatever wood was around. So this is just like an example. Like it's, we want to put a new roof on to make it livable and safe. So that's just a picture of what the roof is now, and there's some others too. Anything you click on, James, I can comment on.
Sure, I'm just unfortunately I had these a little out of order, so it's hard to. I'm not sure if everybody was able to get out to the site, because currently they do have a skip out in front to clear a lot of the debris that's inside. So I was on site earlier in the week, and I just took some pictures kind of around the building, and everybody's seen these as part of your package as well. But I'll just go through those just so you can see what the house looks like and the state it's in currently. So this is the front, and then this is where the side is. The front addition that they're proposing would go essentially in this space here. This is the side yard setback on one side, and here's the side yard on the other side, and you can see this is the backyard here, and here's the back of the house. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe there's about 6.5 meters back there, I think. Lou, is that correct?
Yeah, 6.58 meters you have back there.
So I think those are all the photos that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just the drawings that are pretty accurate. They're good. I don't know what to say here, James.
No, that's okay. I'm just waiting for Brian to see if we have any questions.
Yeah, I was just waiting to, if there was any further, comments about anything. Yeah. So, do we have questions or comments about the proposal?
I have a question. I'm sorry, you can't
Yep,
see.
Holly?
my hand up. To the gentleman presenting, thank you. Just, did you have like an interior site plan?
Not
Yes.
yet, because we needed to understand what we were dealing with on the outside. We wanted to cross that bridge first. That was the big thing, to see what we were going to be allowed to do. Like with the addition and everything, it will influence what we do, because there's very little space in there. To be honest with you, like it's about 950 square feet, so we have to be very creative about what we do.
Like you mentioned, you lived in Burlington. Will this be a rental property, or will this be, what will you do with this property?
Our plan, full disclosure, we had a cottage in Bob Cajun about a year and a half ago, and we would enjoy that. And we sold that, and we were looking for our alternative to that. And when this jumped up, we grabbed it to view it as that. So instead of driving all the way to Bob Cajun, it's much better to go see family in Port Dalhousie and have like a cottage alternative. So our intent is to enjoy this as a secondary home. Otherwise, I wouldn't spend all this money on a rental.
Thank you.
Councillor Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. Through you to the presenter, how old did you say the house was?
I think 97, 96, 97, and that's just, now, don't ask me where I saw that. I think I was doing some research on pulling up old, what do you, I don't even know, like old files or something before we bought it, and that popped up. And there's renos done on this house at some point as well. So where they added to the front in kind of in a different way, but I would say it's about that age, I'm guessing.
So
James,
through
do
the
you
chair,
know the
perhaps
age, or?
I can provide I believe it's 1929 is the date that we have in our system. It shows up on the 1929 fire insurance plan. The original footprint of it was just this section here. And then there was a later addition which added the side addition. I don't have a date of construction for the side addition. But when you see the building here, hold on, I'll go to the back. So you can see here that this was the original roof line of the original portion, and then they would have added this portion afterwards. Like I said, I don't know the date of that. Unfortunately, the aerial photography in this area is very blurry after a certain time, so you just can't make out the shape of the house, unfortunately. But the original portion dates to 1929.
I was talking to a friend of mine who grew up in Port Dalhousie, and he said the original house belonged to two sisters, and a third sister moved in to live with them I think it was in the 1950s. So they put the addition on to, provide more room for the third sister.
That's great to know. Yeah.
Carlos, you had another question?
Mr. Chair. Yes. A couple of more. So I know this property very well because I live down the street and I walk by it, and I know the lady that was living there for the last 7 or 8 years, however long she was. There was something in the proposal you said, James, about changing the window openings, which I know the guidelines don't recommend. Can you explain that?
Yes, certainly. So through the chair, so this window here to the left of the doorway, and essentially the doorway as well, was originally a porch. So it's an enclosed porch. So this window here, these wouldn't have been, and this door wouldn't have been original. So those are alterations that have happened over time, and you can see the back wall here, which would have been the original exterior wall before they enclosed it. Whether that happened or not in the 50s, I'm not sure, but at some point it was enclosed. And then Lou and Dave could probably speak to what their plans are for this window. based on the plans, it looks like that the intention is to replace it with a new window and center this door. You can see that here, but they can clarify if I'm misspeaking.
Yeah, so it's just basically what I did is I centered the opening, to put the roof center with the door, so it looks more, and then we just put 2 new windows, well, 3 windows in the front, we could do.
The key is to put to make the door level with the
peak.
the peak of the window or the roof,
So it blends in.
just so
it's like more center.
More centered, and then the window is just kind of on either side of it, and I think the windows are similar. They're similar size. It's just about balance and symmetry to make it look good.
Thank you. And my last question, Mr. Chair, through you to either James, and I know Manager Josipovich is on the line as well. I guess I'm concerned that what makes Port Lucie interesting is all the different houses and the different sizes and the different setbacks, and this would change the look of the house totally. I understand the need for more space and the fact that you don't have that much space at the back where addition should be, but did you consider putting your addition at the back, which would require requesting a variance for the setback? And I would think that there is a decent likelihood that the Committee of Adjustment would grant it if you explain that it's because of the heritage guidelines, and you would still have a really large yard in front to enjoy. Is that a possibility?
From our perspective, when we were looking at the house, I know you guys talk meters. It's 20 feet in the back. It's extremely tight. Like that any addition on there, I can't imagine they would approve it, to be honest. It's like so tight back there. But I mean, realistically, like I don't think they would approve it anyway. And whatever little addition we could put on there wouldn't make any sense at all, to be honest. Like it's 20 feet of backyard.
So just for reference, fortunately I don't have a better picture than this, but I'm standing in this photo here, I'm standing at the back fence.
Right. But your addition that you're putting on is also about 20 feet, right?
So remember, so the house dips in on the right. So so you see that first little dip there is 6 feet. And then from there it's 8. So that addition on the right in total is 14 feet. So it's 6 feet to make it flush to the existing front of the house. And then the rest is flush to the porch. So that addition is 14 feet.
14 feet deep, you mean?
Yeah, 14 feet and 8 feet. On the left, it's 8 feet. And then the deeper one is about 14.
14 and a half feet.
So back to my point. So you could potentially put those 14 feet at the back and you would still have 6 feet to the fence, to the property line, right? Potentially, I'm just asking,
Yeah, that would. Yeah, we wouldn't do that, to be honest.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, just I wanted to ask Ms. Josipovich, do you think something like that could be applied to the Committee of Adjustment, applied for?
Through the chair to the councillor. I mean, you can apply for whatever you like to the Committee of Adjustment. It's tricky to kind of give you an idea of, yes, it's supportable or not. Typically, we would have some concerns about them getting that close to the back. It does back onto somebody's other home and backyard, so there are some privacy and overlook concerns there. It does depend on the context. We'd have to see a plan. We'd have to see what kind of height we're looking at. I think you'd also impact what looks like, I believe it's a large walnut there at the back. If you're putting in any type of footings for that building, that might have to come down. So you have to take a look at whether that's a shared boundary tree, whether it's all theirs. And then from a building code side of things, As you get closer to the property line, you can have fewer openings on that wall. So can they get some windows on the rear, even if we were to approve a variance from a planning perspective? So those are all kind of the considerations.
Right. Thank you for that. Those are my questions, Mr. Chair. And just a comment, I don't know if it's my computer or somebody else's, but I still find, James, when you speak, it is not as clear as some of the other microphones. And I had the same issue with Ms. Josipovich right now. I don't know if, but anyway, just
No,
a thought.
it is James's. Yeah, the voice is on James. It keeps breaking up quite a bit on James's.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Carlos. I don't know who had their hand up first. I'll go with Andrew.
Yeah, there are clearly a few elements of this proposal that don't conform to the guidelines, but I at the same time, I want to point out that properties like this in Port Dalhousie, when they come before us, generally come with plans that have little or no consideration for preservation, which this one does have. And through the applications we've looked at, it is very challenging to make a building like this viable. And I think to do it, there inherently is going to have to be some compromise, and the committee is going to have to decide, whether it's compromise they're comfortable with. But from my own perspective, I think your approach is commendable. You referenced that you wouldn't spend this much money to turn this into a rental property, and to me, that highlights the fact that to take a property like this and make it viable does take a considerable investment, which a lot of people are not willing to do. We've seen many cases of that come before us, and homes like this in Port Dalhousie are disappearing as a result. So from that standpoint, to me, the alterations that you want to make this a house that's going to be there in 100 years are certainly compromises that I can live with, and I do appreciate the efforts you're taking to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I was just trying to unmute. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. You did mention that you needed to do some roof renovations to make it safe. What was not safe about that? Because I have a similar style cottage home in St. Catharines as well, and I have those same planks, but I didn't catch what was unsafe about the ceiling and the roof.
I'm not a roofer, so I'm not a construction guy. It's just when we saw that, it was clear that we needed to reinforce everything in there, and then there was when I saw like kind of the mixed match of kind of old wood and gaps and holes and that kind of thing. It was like my first reaction was, well, of course we're going to replace this. The other thing was the livability of the height. You need, for us to meet our family's needs, we just want to make it livable and just get a reasonable height that matches the area. That was the big thing. So is it safe? It could be. I'm not a roofer. It wouldn't be my first choice. I would much rather have a new roof on it.
Okay, yeah. What I did, I opened up the roof and just put a beam in, a structural beam to keep the same roof line in it, right? So that's a way to keep the same roof line with a beam in and bolt it even.
Oh, and I'm sure like we could Jimmy rig it and make it solid. The reality is we want to make this livable for 100 years for my family, and we just want the extra height that still, by the way, is under what our neighbors are and what every other house is pretty much in that neighborhood. That's how we came up with that height. We just want to make it livable. And right now that height is not for us.
Like even for a cottage, because you guys are you spending like the summers there? Are you going to rent it when you're not there, like short-term rental?
No, we see, Mike, I have kids that are pretty soon are going to be saying, "Hey, Daddy, I want to go live in that house." Or who knows, we might sell our house in Burlington and kind of go there. Like, it just offers flexibility
Okay.
to us.
Thanks.
Yeah. And generally when we do like projects, we tend to do them really right. We're not like our default is not to save money. We want to like do it properly for 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road so that we're really don't regret it later. So we want to do this the way our intent is, just do it the way we would do it if we didn't have limitations. How would we want to live there?
Okay.
That makes sense.
Lorraine?
Well, most of my questions have been asked and answered, but after listening to Carlos and Andrew, and thinking about kinds of compromises, and if it wasn't going to be acceptable to put that addition on the back, would it be any kind of idea for consideration that the front be made to at least replicate the look of the front? It's not going to be the same heritage build, but perhaps the idea of the door not centered and the door over to the side with, you know, the smaller window on one side and the bigger window on the other side, perhaps that would at least replicate the individual look of this and could sort of continue it for eternity rather than, you know, changing it to a different kind of front. Does that make sense?
So, oh no, I totally understand what you're saying. So just the window on the right all the windows are old and need to be replaced, but the window on the right is like a real window. The window on the left is actually like a 3-season cottage, like single pane, like thrown in, like very poor quality window, which makes sense because that sunroom was added after. And then they would have used that as a cold room almost, because it was like, you in the old days, you'd go in, take your jacket off, and people wouldn't heat those rooms. So that is not of the same. It's almost like an addition onto what was there. So that's the first thought is they're not even like, they're just like sliding single plain windows. Like, and
but
then
I'm not suggesting that you would keep that window. I'm suggesting that you replicate that look. I assumed you were going to be replacing the windows anyhow. Maybe that's incorrect. And I thought it looked like you had torn the whole inside apart. So that's why I thought the facade could still replicate what this looks like, and with a new construction.
Yeah. So our what we would like is just from a symmetry standpoint and an aesthetic standpoint, that door is underneath that peak, which the first thing our Lou was like, guys, you got to center the door. Like any reasonable build, like the door is underneath the peak, just for a symmetry standpoint. That's our strong preference.
Okay, so I guess my request is that instead you consider the idea of replicating the heritage look of the front rather than symmetry. That it still is very, very attractive with that heritage look. So that was just my suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions about a couple of the features on the house. It looks like you've got a fairly large chimney there on the right-hand side. Is that going to be removed when the roof line is changed?
That's our plan, to remove that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And the existing front wall, if you're going to be pushing it out, like to put a porch on it, will that be the existing front wall of the house, or will it become an interior wall?
I can comment on that. So where those two windows and that door are, that will remain, and the porch will come off of that. And then so that will remain the external wall, and then the porch will come off of that.
Okay.
That makes sense. So that won't move.
No.
Okay. Carlos, you had another question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I spoke already. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First of all, in terms of the roof, the discussion of the roof, I just wanted, and you're probably more knowledgeable about this than I am, Mr. Chair, but when the applicant talked about gaps on the roof board, please understand that in the old homes, they're always built with gaps because they put shakes or whatever on, and most of the houses in Port Lucie, if you were to look at the original roof, they would have gaps in the boards. Secondly, I want to make sure that the committee understands, because I get concerned when I hear these discussions, and I was involved in the original designation and the drafting the original guidelines. Now we have issues with them, but that the fact that something was an addition and is not original doesn't mean it's not heritage. Heritage evolves. So, every house in Port Lucie has had additions, renovations, new plumbing, this, wiring, whatever. So the fact that that's not original doesn't mean it's not heritage. If we were going to look only at original things, we would all be using outhouses. But the last comment I wanted to make is I think Lorraine makes a very good point. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Carlos. Any other questions or comments about the proposal? Oh, Mark?
Yes, I just wanted
You're
to.
muted.
Am I still muted?
No, we can
Oh,
hear
okay. Just wanted to mention, comment on Lorraine's comment and Councillor Garcia's agreement of it. At least consider the door positioning. I think it would still look good without it being right in the center of the peak as well.
So through the chair, I don't want to put words in the committee's mouth, but I'm wondering if there's some sort of compromise where, and perhaps the owner would be amenable to this, where the original window, which we know, is an original kind of size and shape, whether they'd be open to retaining that, and then knowing that this is not kind of a window based on its, style, and also kind of, it was never intended to be anything more than to enclose a porch. Whether there's opportunities to kind of replace this and make this more of a permanent condition. So essentially you'd have half of the front, this window here would be retained. They would put in a new door and window similar to what you would see here essentially. So this window would look more like what's there now, while they would make a new opening and new window to the left. And perhaps the owner can comment on that if they'd like.
Yeah. So James, you were just breaking up a little bit, but I got the gist of that. So basically, not less around the symmetry and just more maybe a little. You're saying essentially a little wider on the right and a little slimmer on the left.
Yeah. So hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to grab my microphone after this, but so this window would be retained as is. So you'd still have this kind of size and shape and style, but you would end up putting in a new door and a new window similar to what you've proposed here. It might not be the exact size, but it would be because this one's, essentially, it was never intended to be a full season window, and potentially you could replace that with something that's intended to be permanent. So you'd be melding kind of the old with the new on the front there. And I don't want to speak for the committee as to whether that would be appropriate or not, but it might be a good compromise to satisfy everybody.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. So, and I know you're not. So they, and it comes down to just the measurements, right, to make sure it's making sense on the side. So they may be the same size or they may not, right? Just because you're proposing, James, we leave the door there as opposed to centering it, or centering it and then doing the.
I think what I'm proposing is that you retain this opening, so the window opening here to the right, and let me know if I'm cutting out and if it's hard to understand. But so you retain this, and then everything to the left of that would be essentially kind of a new design. So the door may stay in the exact same spot, or if you have room, you could move it, a foot over, or whatever you'd like in terms of getting that kind of look that you'd want to get. And then this window here would be replaced with a new window that would be similar to what you've proposed in your drawing. So does that hopefully make sense?
It does. I think I think there's room on the right to make that window a little bit bigger, because I think that window is just under 6 feet, if I recall. So I think there's room to make that right window that size. To be honest, I think that's doable. No, I'm not going to speak for you, Lou, but I think we may have room. So in spirit, Lou's not want symmetry, but in spirit, yes. Like we move that over
through the chair. So what we can do, I mean, you don't obviously Lou would need to go to the drawing board and figure this out. It's not we are able to. As a committee, the committee can recommend approval of the project based on the following conditions. And so one of the conditions could be that you look into kind of redesigning the front to incorporate this feedback. And then we would be able to approve that, once we see new plans. Wouldn't have to bring you back to the committee necessarily, as long as, it matches the intent of what the committee wanted to see. And then we'd be able to get your building permit after that. Does that work?
Yeah, it does. Thanks, James.
Yeah, no problem. I see two other hands up as well.
So. Gail?
Gail, you're muted.
Sorry, didn't mean to be a devil's advocate. I'm having a little problem with my reactions. Anyway, I really like what the gentlemen are suggesting through you. I really like the symmetry. I don't think it actually, I know there are compromises that have to be made, but I just want to say, I think it's one of the best things we've ever looked at as a group. And I understand the drawings and I understand everything that's being said. And I'm very much in agreement with what they're hoping to do. That's all.
Lorraine?
I was just going to reiterate that it was the style of the window and the placement of the door that really made the look so spectacular in this house. So I think it's not just a new window, because I heard him say that again, but it was basically the style. If you can't retain that original window, at least sort of that same style of window and the door. So not quite what Gail was saying, but just wanted to reiterate that.
Yeah, I think for my personal taste, I think I'd be inclined to have the door just offset a little bit. I mean, there's nothing that says that the doors have to be perfectly in line with the the center of the peak, because that, like you say, that would retain a little bit more of the present look and feel of the house. So do you have any other comments or suggestions, questions? Maria?
Yes, just a quick reiteration of what we've been discussing. I think if the applicant could redesign the front to incorporate our feedback, that would be a very good thing. And I really love the little house. It's very cute. I can identify with that with my own. And I'm glad it's still standing and that you care enough about it to work with it and keep it going. I have one odd question. The rear of the house, just a curiosity. Would you be able to tell me what the rear looks like a metal stack sitting separate from the house is? A chimney from a fireplace or something like that? Is it?
It's not a fireplace, and I don't know what it is. I think it's just some old. I wonder if there was some old furnace or something like that. But it's nothing that's used, because it's got a modern furnace. So I don't know what it is, and it's not used. So I wish I could tell you. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we don't have any other questions or comments, then I guess we should have some kind of a motion on this project.
Yeah, so through the chair, I think we would need to, there's kind of two different ideas that have been thrown around. And one is to accept the proposal as is. And the other one is to incorporate a little bit more of the design of the facade that exists into new drawings. So I think we would need to figure out which direction we'd like to go in for a motion. The motion that I currently have is incorporating the changes, but maybe it makes sense to first vote on whether to just accept everything as is, and then after that we can talk. If that does not pass, we can include the condition to redesign the facade. So does that make sense?
So we're going to be voting on the motion that you have first, that it's the approval of the proposed alterations to 15 Dalhousie. Just
as designed. So or as proposed. So that the SCHC recommends approval of the proposed alterations to 15 Dalhousie Avenue. So and then if this item were not to pass, and we need 50% plus one, then I would add in the condition that they look at redesigning the front facade. And then they would go back to the drawing board, essentially make those changes, and staff, myself and Tammy would be able to approve those once those changes have been made. So first of all, I guess we'll have a vote on this motion.
Okay. So does anybody wish to make the motion that we have on the table right now?
Yes, I'd like to. I like what they are proposing. So I'd like to make the motion.
Okay. So Gail's made the motion. So all in favor of the motion? We've got Gail, we've got Andrew, John, Robert.
Holly, you'll need to let us know if you're voting in favor verbally.
Maybe Holly, you are breaking up. Maybe Holly didn't hear you.
Holly, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but you'll need to vote, say yay or nay on your vote.
Holly? No, she's gone again.
She's unmuting, but we're not hearing her. Yeah.
I don't think she's even.
Sorry about that. I can hear you now.
Oh, can you hear the motion?
The motion is to accept the plans as presented.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Do you vote in favor or against?
That's with the roof line centered and the door centered and the window centered.
Yes.
I'm really tossed about this one. This is a really tough decision. I will say yes. I will vote yes.
Okay, so that's 5 in favor. Brian, I don't know where your vote lands.
I was not voting in favor of this.
Okay, so I think we have 5 votes for and 5 against, so that doesn't carry. So
actually, I think we have 5 in favor, 4 against, it appears.
Who do we have voting in favor? We've got John Crawley, Gail, Andrew,
oh,
Holly.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's only 4, isn't it?
No, myself,
No,
Robert, Gail, John, and Holly are in favor.
Yeah, we have 10 members here today, right?
Oh, do we?
Yes. Yeah, so if we have 10 members, we need 6 yes votes. So
Okay.
unfortunately, so that's
5 and 5 then, yeah.
It's 5 and 5, yeah.
Okay, so I will add the.
You're really breaking up. I have a little trouble understanding you.
So here's the motion. So hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to try to fix this in a second, but that the SCHAC recommends approval of the proposed alterations to 15 Dalhousie Avenue with the condition that the facade be redesigned to incorporate more of the current style with regards to the windows and doors. Does that reflect what people would like to see in the motion?
Looks good for me. To me. Yep. So does somebody wish to make this motion?
I will.
Lorraine, thank you. And all in favor of it? Okay, so that has passed. So
Dave and Lou, I'll get in touch tomorrow. We can talk about next steps.
Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great
Okay,
day.
thanks.
We'll log out now. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Okay, so moving on to item 7.2, 25 Henrietta Street.
Yes, so I'm going to do this item, but I need to get my microphone so that way everybody can hear me. So if you don't mind, I'll just wait 1 second, or if everybody can wait 1 second, I'll be right back. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, can everybody hear me better now?
Yep.
Oh, okay, maybe that's the solution then.
I've noticed, James, that your voice has been very tinny from the time that you, not just today, but earlier. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. I'll use this in the future then.
Oh, that's much better. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, let me just get organized for a second. Okay, so 25 through the chair, 25 Henrietta is the next item, 7.2. I just wanted to welcome, first of all, the new owner of 25 Henrietta. It's Ron Vermeyer, and his planning consultant, Sydney D. Tomaso. Sorry, Sydney, if I butchered your last name there. And Don Romanko from Better Neighborhoods. They're the planning consultants for the owner. So just wanted to first just give a little bit of an overview of how we got to this point, just so everybody's on the same page and we can kind of start from the same spot. So during the summer, this process was initiated by the neighbors of 25 Henrietta and the local councillor who requested that the Heritage Committee determine if the property merited heritage recognition. It was known in the community that this was the old Walkinshaw farmhouse. The committee referred the item to the subcommittee that's in charge of evaluating properties, and the subcommittee found that the property met the criteria for listing under the Heritage Act. And I'll let Andrew kind of go into more detail about what was found in the evaluation, since he's the chair of that subcommittee, and we'll go to him in just a second. The committee then passed a motion recommending to council that the property should be listed on the city's Heritage Register. However, that motion has not yet gone to council, and that's because as part of our process, we do like to inform and invite the property owner to come and attend a meeting if they'd like. Unfortunately, because of the timing of the previous sale, the previous owner was not able to attend the meeting, and so we're meeting that requirement today. So Mr. Vermeyer and his consultants are here to speak with the committee about the property, and they have some photos that they're going to share with us as well of the house. And before I kind of turn things over to Andrew, just want to outline what listing means, just so that way everybody, make sure everybody's on the same page. So Ontario Heritage Act allows municipalities to list properties on a heritage register. When a property is listed, the owner cannot demolish a building without giving council 60 days notice in the form of a demolition application. In the event of a demolition application, council can then designate the property to prevent the demolition or allow the demolition to happen. It's really important to note that listing does not prevent an owner from making alterations to a property. It just pertains to demolition. The changes to the Act from Bill 23, which happened earlier this year, meant that properties can only be listed for up to 2 years. Bill 23 also created a new rule where properties that are listed and part of a planning application must be designated within 90 days of a complete application, or the right to designate the property is lost. Over this year, since we've been trying to figure out how to deal with these changes to Bill 23, we've been working with developers to extend that timeline. It's a very heavy-handed timeline, and it doesn't allow for kind of the collaboration that's required on a lot of planning applications. And it really doesn't acknowledge the fact that planning, is very complicated, and there's more than just heritage that needs to be considered. And really, the planning process requires flexibility. So we've been trying to work with developers to make sure that we're not heavy-handed running through designations that are then causing problems for applications down the road. At this moment, we are just looking at listing the building, and future plans to designate the building would be dependent on a planning application being submitted, or if the designation subcommittee that's currently working on their prioritization project, if they determine that the property should be a high priority for designation. So with that, I'll turn things over to Andrew, and he can give a little bit of an overview of what the subcommittee found in terms of the significance of the property. And then after that, we'll have Mr. Vermeyer and his consultants kind of speak to their perspective on things, and so they'll show some photos of the house, and we'll kind of just have a discussion about the merits of listing the property. So Andrew, if you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, James. First of all, this is a very interesting property, and I think a number of members of the subcommittee were quite taken with it when we first looked at it. And we're able to uncover some really interesting information about it. I will, though, reserve my points here to the elements that are specifically related to the criteria for adding it to the registry that James referred to. One of the criteria for consideration is that the property has design value or physical value, and in this case, we found that it does. Because it's a representative example of an arts and crafts bungalow. Construction date, we believe, is around 1912. I also want to note that that it may also be the case that it has value in that category due to a high degree of craftsmanship or artistic merit. However, we weren't able to evaluate that yet at this point without having better access to the house to evaluate that. So that is one potential thing that would be added in that category later. The second category is property has historical value or associative value. In this case, it does have value in that category as it relates to the Walkinshaw family. Most significantly, I think Stuart Maxwell Walkinshaw, who was an accomplished musician and accompanist who was involved in the motion picture business, and he was very accomplished in that area and a significant St. Catharines resident as a result of that. It also has a good degree of historical and associative value for its relationship to A.E. Nicholson, who's one of the most significant St. Catharines architects. So in that category, we have two strong arguments that make a connection there. And then the third category is contextual value. And in this case, it has contextual value relative to its historical surroundings because of the link to Stuart Maxwell Walkinshaw, who donated the land nearby that became Walkinshaw Park. So in the case of this property, we found that each of those three key categories, this is a property that does have value, and therefore, as James says, we concluded that it is a good candidate for addition to the registry. You're muted, James.
There we go. Thanks, Andrew. Having a day, I guess. So I'm going to put photos up on the screen now, and Mr. Vermeyer and his consultants are welcome to kind of speak to what they see and kind of present what their feelings are on the property now that they're the new owners. So just 1 second. And you can go ahead whenever you'd like.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm Sydney DiTomaso. I'm with Better Neighborhoods, and I'm joined with our principal planner, Dan Romanko. The owner, Ron Farmer, he informed me that he unfortunately had a passing in family, so he wasn't able to make it today. So it's just us. But we are agents on behalf of the redevelopment of the site. So yeah, Ron purchased the property and he reached out to us to design this site. And just a little bit of background planning context. This property is within the GO train station secondary plan in St. Catharines, which of course calls for intensification of this neighborhood to support the train station redevelopment. It's also a large, very large underutilized site. That's a really great opportunity for infill development. So over the course of the last month or so, we designed several concepts for the site. And even before learning about the heritage significance of the house, the owner preferred to preserve the original house and certainly has an appreciation for its cultural heritage value. And us at Better Neighborhoods, we're also pretty big proponents of preserving existing houses when we can. And in this case, it really does make a lot of sense from a cultural heritage perspective, but also like a land use economics perspective. So that is essentially what we are proposing. We submitted a pre-con application and we will be meeting planning staff end of November. But when we submitted, James was looped in and he informed us of the house's significance and several meetings that were already had. So I watched all the previous meetings. I learned what you guys said already and familiarized myself with that cultural value. So here's the gist. We are essentially proposing to preserve the original house, but we would like to move it about 12 feet closer to the street. So that's where the picture that's in front of you, that's the house currently sits. It's a bit hidden by trees and shrubs. It's located pretty far back from the lot. It doesn't have, it has a very little relationship to the street. So the owner is prepared to move it closer to the street to improve its street presence, making it more of a prominent feature in the neighborhood. James, you have a picture of the porch, and I'm wondering if you can just bring that up. That would be great. Yeah, that one right there. So it's a big, beautiful porch, and moving it closer to the street would improve that interaction between the public and the private realm. So, you know, when porches are located closer to the street, it facilitates that neighborly human connection and all that kind of stuff. And from a heritage perspective, it makes it more important to the neighborhood and to the streetscape. So we do have an appreciation for that. And if we can move the house, the owner is prepared to reconstruct the basement because that it present that opportunity. And James, you also have a couple of pictures of the basement. If you can flip to those, that'd be great. Yeah, so this is one of them. The basement kind of leaves much to be desired. It has a low ceiling. It appears to have a stone foundation and some outdated materials that don't really contribute to the, yeah, that's another one, that don't really contribute to the heritage value of the house. There's an old boiler that appears to be augmented. And, you know, old stone foundations may eventually let in moisture. We also don't know what's behind that wood paneling. So there's that other photo that shows a pretty deep windows. We don't know what's behind there, but there is potential for mold. We're not entirely sure. But reconstructing the basement would, one, that low ceiling, ensure we can weatherproof it. So that would certainly increase the value of the house. And I think more importantly, extend the lifespan of the house, you know, for the next 100 years or so, which would be wonderful. There have been some more recent modifications to the house. So in one of the photos that haven't been flipped to, you can see an addition of the porch, and it's just the side view, James. There's another, yeah, that one. So there was like a previous owner who had a wheelchair, so you can probably see the wheelchair lift. So there was some kind of pressure treated addition to that porch. And then the elements of, you know, the kitchen and kitchen cabinets and whatnot are a little bit more modern, something like a 60s, 70s look. So that don't necessarily contribute to cultural significance. But what we'd like to do is preserve all those original elements. So, you know, and I've as I've been listening to the previous conversations, it seems like you all have an appreciation for the need for housing. And this site is the perfect opportunity to address that need, but also preserve that heritage value. And the economics of redeveloping the site, I think that include keeping the house, really have a lot of value. And I think it's kind of a win for everybody, the owner, the city, and the community, being able to preserve that house, but also redevelop the site. So yeah, that's essentially what we're presenting. We'd love to hear your feedback. I don't know if Dan has anything else he wanted to say.
I don't have anything additional to add at this time. But you know, as Sydney suggested, you know, better neighborhoods, we're very interested in, you know, how we can contribute from a neighborhood perspective to any new development, and we kind of specialize in the infill and intensification type projects, and we're very focused on good urban design, so that anything that we're proposing would hopefully contribute positively to the street, to the neighbors, all while being somewhat sensitive to the compatibility issues that arise from, you know, the infilling of these larger lots.
Okay, thanks. One thing about, you know, moving houses, I mean, you know, there's pro and con about moving them, and some people will say that, you know, a heritage house shouldn't be moved from its original site because then you're taking it out of its context. In a case like this, I don't see that it's a huge problem because you're basically moving it forward. Part of the house, I think, will still be sitting on its, almost on its original site. And we've done that before with 57 Lakeshore Road, which was, you know, again, another win-win for the Heritage Committee, you know, going back probably 10 years ago. So when you move the house, I assume that spruce tree is going to be sacrificed?
Yeah, yes, it will be. But the owner is prepared to preserve as much of the landscaping as possible. So I know that there's some hedges that provide really good privacy between the neighbors. So anything that can be preserved will be preserved. And he's also prepared to plant new landscaping as well.
And when the house is being moved forward, is part of it still going to be within the footprint of the existing basement?
I'm probably like the move would only be by about 12 feet, depending on feedback from planning staff, of course. But he would want to reconstruct the basement. But the original location, yes, probably maybe half of the original basement.
Because I was going to say, if it's going to be sitting on part of the original basement, will any of that basement be retained and incorporated into the new design or the move?
We honestly haven't contemplated that yet. I guess haven't really gotten that far.
It's
I mean, it would be.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's a little early on to kind of really understand the implications of moving the house. At this juncture, I mean, we have a long way to go in terms of getting some initial feedback from our concepts, and vetting the approvals process, and the zoning, and all those aspects from a planning perspective. So I think at this stage, really just trying to understand there's some opportunity to move the house as a first choice in order to better accommodate the new development.
Because it would be nice if even just a part of that basement could be retained, you know, just to say, like, you know, hey, this is the original Walkinshaw basement. That the whole thing doesn't have to be preserved, but it would be nice if part of it was kept, just as an example of what it, you know, was actually sitting on.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think it would be good to be able to do that, but we haven't yet been able to examine the details of what that would look like.
Okay.
Through the chair, if you don't mind, Brian, I'll jump in for a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that because there's a potential planning application coming in, as part of any planning application, we request various studies, like a structural assessment, to find out, can the building even be moved, right? So all this is at a very high level. It's just a concept right now, and the consultants are sharing their intention, but it's very early days. So just wanted to share that.
Lorraine?
Thank you, James, and thank you, Brian, for all the questions about the moving of the house. I kind of I know it's very early days, and you've been very, very careful in mentioning new development. There must be some, and I'm not asking for specifics, but there must be something you can tell us about that's also behind moving the house forward. So yes, the house moving forward would have more presence in the neighborhood, and I think that's amazing. But I believe there probably is another reason for moving the house for the new development. So I just want some idea of that.
Yeah, sure. So we have concepts in with the planning department. And to be perfectly honest, we just didn't want to share the concept yet because we don't know feedback from planning stuff, but I can describe it. We wanted to move it forward, and we have a series of townhouses that we like to put in the backyard for private road development going up the side of the house, and then potentially a detached house beside this original house. So I think it contemplates about 7 or 8 behind there. Just can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but from a land use economics perspective, something like that would be an economical redevelopment of the site. If we can't move the house, it's quite possible that the numbers don't work out so that the land can be developed. So just from like a housing need perspective, that's kind of where our head was at, but also incorporating the preservation of the site because it does provide value, of course.
Right, and we did talk as a group before about the idea that these larger homes or older homes that are larger, that are on very large lots, and one of the proposals I know that the city was looking at last year or previous years was the idea of how can we use that availability to build houses. So that's why I just wanted to know what you were thinking about. And so my last question would be the access. Where's the access coming from? And I know you're totally high level again, but what are you potentially thinking about access to the townhouses?
Yeah, so we in the pre-con application, of course, we don't know if we can do this yet, but we proposed a 3-meter driveway to the north side of the house. So if you're looking at the picture, it would be on the right side of the house.
Okay.
But the way we proposed it does have a decent buffer from the road. Whether or not that road will be approved, we don't know yet. But it's maybe 2 meters or something like that from the road. So we wanted to give enough of a buffer so that if the basement were to be reconstructed, there would be enough room for like window wells, but also of course like drainage and that kind of thing. So,
and that was going to be my next. That was going to be, even though I said that was my last question, the next question was going to be about the buffer. So thank you very much for that information.
Yeah.
Once again, we're at a very high level right now in terms of some of the other constraints and limitations of the proposed development scheme, which will all affect some of these things that we're talking about.
Yeah,
I understand that. Thank you.
Okay, Gail.
Yes, just I'm unmuting. I'm not sure I understood exactly about the buffer to the north. What is it? Would you repeat what's happening with that Lorraine asked about? The north is the north is the right side of the house where the hedges.
That's right.
Right.
Yes, that's right. So basically the house is located, I think it's 6.8 meters from the property line on the north side, on the right side of that photo. So there's actually quite a bit of, it's just hard to see because of the hedge that's there. So there's about 6.8 meters, and the road that we're proposing is about 3 meters, and it's something like I don't know, 6 feet from the road or something like that. We did want to put like a decent buffer.
A decent what?
We did want to put a decent sized buffer between the road and the
Buffer,
house.
okay.
Yeah. Like it'll be more than 6 feet if approved. Like this is just, these are the numbers that we've given to the planning department to give us feedback on.
Okay, and then my next question is, let's say, I know this is at the high level, but let's say you are able to move the house forward to
Sure.
keep it in line with the other properties along Henrietta.
Yep.
Currently, the driveway for the house goes way behind, and there's all these other little buildings behind. This house you're hoping to retain
Yes.
as is, what, and successfully move it forward. Assuming that, where is the parking for the next owner of the house itself, and what kind of yard and backyard would be allowed for this new property you're proposing?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, like this is all very early stages,
I
but
know.
what we've shown on the concept of the planning department is just 2 parking stalls on the south, or sorry, the like in the front yard of the house, but on the south side of it. So let's say where it is now, it would kind of be like in front of those trees right there on the left side of your screen. For that house, and then the parking for the rest of the development would be all behind the house.
Would there be any yard or lawn or anything at the very the west side, the back of the house? Then, if it's successfully moved forward and had parking spots, but not an additional garage to the east, what would be behind the house at the west? How many feet or property would the original house have?
We proposed a substantial backyard, about 6 meters.
6 meters? Okay.
Yep. It's a decent sized backyard, I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation and telling us your intentions. I know this is still high level. I know that a foundation structural assessment still needs to be done to see if it's feasible to even move it on to the foundation again once it's been excavated. But also, like once that's done, we'll know. But to move it, is this just in like a matter of putting those 7 to 8 units that you were talking about? If you didn't move it, could you put like 3 or 4 or 5, 6 units, or does it have to be moved to put any other units on there?
Yeah, we did contemplate a design where the house isn't moved. Now the economics don't work out as well to do that, and it would also likely result in a very small backyard, so rear yard setback of that original house. So that was kind of one of the advantages of moving the house. It would give it like a backyard, like a real backyard. Whereas if we didn't, it wouldn't have a lot of space. And I know that in the past, planning staff have been quite sensitive to having like a good sized backyard. So the one that we proposed does actually comply with zoning bylaw, for example. But if we didn't, the land use economics may not really even work out to develop the site.
I see.
Sorry, just to reframe that, like relocating the house provides a better living environment for both the proposed and the existing. So, you know, in terms of thinking about the residents, the future residents of these homes and how they'll be occupying the space and the amenity space that's provided, relocating the house achieves a better option for all of that.
Okay, I guess you still need the neighborhood's opinion on that too, I imagine, as well, eh?
There will be a public process, indeed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Andrew?
We've been talking about the house up front. I'm just curious. I know there's a couple of outbuildings in behind there, and from the way you're talking, I presume there's no plan to retain those. I'm just curious as to whether there's anything there worth retaining in any way. I mean, is that I'm only looking at the overhead on Google Maps? Is that a newly built garage, or is that an old barn? What are those buildings? And if there is some value there, is there any consideration for, if not retaining them, at least salvaging material and other valuable components of those for reuse elsewhere?
Yeah, I don't know if the barn out there in the garage is original. It looks to be original. It has the same materials as the original house, so I'm just gonna assume so. But that is certainly an option. I spoke with our other partner here, and he threw out some ideas of maybe moving the barn where we're proposing one of the add one of the houses. We haven't really discussed that with the owner, so I can't say that he's necessarily prepared to do that. But I mean, like, if that can work out, that would be wonderful.
We haven't really assessed the condition of the barn. It is quite old. It hasn't it doesn't look like it's aged particularly well or been maintained. I mean, it's still standing, of course, but we really haven't assessed whether it's worth that exercise or not.
Even if some of the beams and barn boards and so on, or metal fixtures are in good condition, they do have salvage value, and I know there are people who would be interested in reusing those, which would be a positive on a lot of fronts. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, we'd be happy to chat about that with the owner and assess, if that could be done.
If the barns or outbuildings are to be removed, I'm certain that any of the materials that are deemed of value would be offered up for that purpose.
John Crawley?
Yes, I toured the property a while back before the sale, and that barn in behind is a two-story barn. I think it's in pretty good shape, and the materials definitely need to be reused, saved, salvaged, whatever. And Andy, you could probably use it on your site somewhere in your rework.
I would be a little bit uncomfortable being the beneficiary having suggested it, but I absolutely could connect. I know there are people who are very interested. Next week I've got a truck going down to salvage some barn pieces somewhere, so I know there are a lot of people who are interested in that material, and a lot of people have lost a lot of money by throwing things into landfills that have value like that, and not just money, but goodwill, community goodwill for people who would like to use those things, which in your case may be more valuable than a little bit of cash.
And considering that the property originally came through the Hayner family, if the barn, it might even be older than the house. It could be a Hayner barn. So in that case, yeah, it would be nice if the material could be salvaged and repurposed.
You shouldn't say that, Brian. I have Hayner ancestors as well, so now you got me more interested.
Lorraine, your hand is up. And you're on mute.
Is the owner intending to live in the moved house? And if not, what would it be done with it? Sold?
We want to sell it. So, he didn't really give us any more details than that. But go to a new family or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Gail, you've got another comment?
Yeah, through you. Again, how many townhouses are you planning on putting on the long property at the back?
We put 7 on the concept plan behind there.
And the ingress to it would be alongside the park, part of the Walkinshaw Park?
We're not directly abutting the park. We're there's just 2 other property owners, like residential.
Right. So it would go up beside the driveway of the new, as the houses move forward.
Some at the back and some at the side. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maria? You're still on mute.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Would have you had an assessment by a company as to the viability of moving the house and retaining it intact?
No, we haven't had it assessed yet. James did flag that as something that would likely be required, and the owner is prepared to have some kind of structural professional assess whether it can be moved or not.
Thank you.
Yeah, so through the chair, as part of a pre-consultation process, so the applicant submits their application and then all the different city departments provide feedback on it, because there's all sorts of different kind of issues at play, I guess. And so each department and each person will request different reports that they might require. And so as part of this, we would require a structural assessment from a structural engineer, and that's typical and standard for this type of project.
Okay. So if
I
there's
just
no,
have a question. Sorry.
yeah, Holly. Yep.
Sorry, my video is not working today, but thank you for the presentation, Sydney and Dan. I was just, as I was sitting listening to everything, I thought of a case where there was a home at 333 Main Street in St. Catharines, across from down in Port, and they kept the heritage home and then built the new towns in behind. So it all works. So I don't know if it's going to work.
We actually were the consulting firm on that project. Is that right, Dan? Yeah. So we're very familiar with that.
We took that project to the committee and to the committee for approval. I think it's yet to be built, mind you, but
yeah, it works. It works nice with the incorporation of the heritage and the new.
yeah, thanks for drawing that to our attention. One of the better aspects of this particular project is that the house has a lot more prominence to the street, where that other one had some views that had to be mitigated to accommodate the other proposed townhomes. So really what this presents is an opportunity simply to move it forward about 10 or 12 feet and provide the heritage value a little more curb exposure, if you will.
Gail, do you have another comment?
I just would like to say that I was on the committee then, and I remember Holly and Brian certainly were on 333 Main Street, and your plans were very, very large at the time of going all around the house and putting in townhomes, and that has not happened. Just the 3 homes behind the 333 Main Street. And these plans sound much more modest than that one, and I think you're going to find the neighborhood doesn't want the development, but that's up to whatever happens with the public consultation. I just hope that the neighbors can appreciate that maybe the moving of the house forward is a good thing for people on either side. And I followed Better Neighborhoods through Glen Bar and Queen Street, 86 Queen Street. I know you do good work, so I'm just going to say that.
We appreciate you saying that.
Yep, Lorraine.
So is this a more common approach due to the lack of housing that we've all been hearing and talking about? So is that idea of moving a house or building around a heritage home becoming more common in the area and across the province, would you say? Probably too big a question, but just really interested in that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if that was directed to us.
It was.
Well, I would say not every developer is sympathetic to heritage homes on properties, and I don't think that they all together consider keeping the existing homes on properties where we would, first look to try and design some infill around that. So I don't know how common it is. There's certainly a lot more pressure for land within urban areas to be redeveloped for the purposes of infill and intensification, such as this, and certain areas like this that are designated for that purpose, especially surrounding the Go Hub. So I can't speak to what other consultants' approach would be or developers' approaches, but certainly it would be our preference, especially if it's been flagged for some heritage value or as a heritage resource. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly more and more pressure to develop land within urban boundaries, and so I think being sensitive on how we approach that is key to making sure that we can develop gentle intensification that is still compatible and appropriate within neighborhoods.
Thank you. James, what was that? Wasn't it part of one of the new Ontario bills that was recommending this? Because I remember us having the conversation. I remember commenting that I would rather see the heritage home move forward and how homes built behind, if we were talking about heritage homes on large properties, rather than the homes built in front of heritage homes, because then we can still appreciate the heritage homes, as well as adding to the property. What was some kind of bill from Ontario government that advocated for that?
Yeah, through the chair, I think it probably was a response to Bill 23, which has kind of been the biggest change that we faced, especially in terms of the Heritage Act. So I think it came out of that conversation. But yeah, I think it's an acknowledgement that we do need more housing. It's the biggest crisis that we have right now. I mean, other than the climate change crisis, but that's a worldwide type of thing. But at least locally, new housing is desperately needed. And in a city like St. Catharines, there's nowhere to sprawl, which is a good thing, because we do have the green belt surrounding us. And so you do require infill if you're going to provide housing to people. And personally, I find a project to be a lot more interesting when you're working with what's there and infilling behind it and finding solutions in that way. Just makes for much more interesting kind of neighborhoods and communities. And I think you find this is something that's going to happen more and more over the next few years in St. Catharines. And I think what I've found kind of, over the last decade of doing this type of work, and when I was on the private side, a lot of places, Brampton, Caledon, places like that do a lot more sprawl, where they're actually developing, 100-acre farms and turning them into subdivisions. There was always, an old farmhouse on those properties, right? And so those are getting knitted into the subdivisions, and kind of allowing for that story to continue to be told. Yeah, so it's something we're going to see a lot more of, and I think it could be a real positive. And I view these as assets, right, for developers too, right? So I think it's a good way to give back to the community, and also, people love heritage homes, and there's a market for buying these. I get calls all the time for people that want to buy heritage properties. They just want to understand what it means to own a heritage property. So yeah, it's something that I think works for everybody, and people tend to really like it, right? So I think it's great that our committee is very open to this type of development, because not all heritage committees are. But I think it's a real acknowledgement that good things can still happen when development is on heritage properties.
And if we move it forward, then we still get to see it, the heritage home.
Yeah, through the chair.
If possible.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, yes, it makes it a little more prominent.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of questions. we need to, if we can move the home, right?
Right, if we can.
You know, there's structural issues and stuff like that that you have to be concerned about. But you know, there's certainly ways to say, yep, that's a benefit, right? That it's going to be a more prominent feature on this site. There are heritage purists that would say, nope, never move anything, leave it in its spot. But
True.
you know, the alternative is this building disappears, right? So I think it's important for the heritage world to realize that, you know, there's a lot of competing interests, and we have to be flexible too. And if a homeowner is willing to, you know, retain a house and, you know, just shift it over, that's not, you know, the worst solution in the world, right? So there's a lot of alternatives that are much worse.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, when I worked for the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, going back 25 years ago, we did a lot of archaeological investigations and windshield surveys and things for built heritage in places like Pickering and Markham, and we found that there were a lot of new subdivisions going up that had the original farmhouse still left on its exact footprint. And for me, it was a real a delightful surprise to, you know, come around, you know, the corner onto a street, and all of a sudden there's, you know, the heritage house looming up in front of you. And they were using them for things like community centers. You know, if somebody in the neighborhood wanted to, you know, book a wedding reception or something, you know, they could rent the original farmhouse, and they were being put to good uses. So again, a win-win for everybody. Councillor, you've got a comment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some clarification for those of you who may not have been on the committee at the time, since we made the comparison to 333 Main Street. As you're aware, yes, there are some similarities, but the heritage home is not being moved. And as you pointed out at the beginning, and I think James mentioned, heritage policy essentially is against moving heritage properties from their original site. So just a comment. Thank you.
Well, I mean, like I say, we had 57 Lakeshore Road, and that was the property owner at the time wanted to put, you know, lots of new houses in on that spot, and he had no room, no space in his plan for the original farmhouse. So, but he was going to retain the heritage maple tree behind it. So we basically said, the Heritage Committee said at the time, if you can move 57 Lakeshore Road about 10 feet, 15 feet, and put it on a new foundation, then you've got an extra lot or space for a road to go down the side of it. And after a little bit of negotiations, he said, yeah, that'll work for me. So the house is still on its original property. It's just not quite on its original site. But I mean, to me, that's a moot point, because if it's still on the original property that it stood on for 140 years, it's still in its original context. Anyway, so do we have any other questions or comments on this item? If not, I guess we need to make a motion.
So through the chair, I mean, we can make another motion. We made one 2 meetings ago recommending that this property should be listed, recommending to council that this property should be listed. It doesn't sound like there's any change in that, so I'm not sure that another motion is needed. But yeah, this is an item that will come back to the committee, especially since there are development plans. So, and there will be more information down the road. So, and a lot of these questions really didn't have to do with necessarily the listing of the property, but the future of it. And I think, you know, when the plans are more solidified, we'll bring these back to the group and to have more comment.
Well, I mean, it's all sounding very positive at this point. So if the old motion that we made is still standing, then I guess we don't have to do anything.
Great. So thanks, Sydney. Thanks, Dan, for coming out. And I'll get in touch with you tomorrow, and we'll chat about next steps.
So
Thank you so much.
Just a comment, that was my motion at the last meeting of, yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, moving on to item 7.3, the Insight program. I assume Adrian is with us.
Hello, I'm here.
Hello, Adrian.
Hello. Thanks for having me back, everybody. James is going to pull up some pictures. We settled on a couple. I hope you'll be pleased. As you remember, we don't have a lot of time for this particular one. So I appreciate all of your suggestions, and they've been added to the queue for future use. Some, however, are not don't really fit in the program, so they may not ever be part of ours, but definitely should go on your list of more traditional plaquing, because yeah, there were lots of great ideas out there. One thing I want to say is that there's no real sort of bracket on how old something has to be included in the project. So the Penn Center is a great idea. And just as an example of something that isn't that old, that could be included, because it certainly doesn't look like what it looked like before then, or even some during construction as well, and the construction of the 406 in that neighborhood as well. Pretty dramatic changes that we have some interesting photos of. So again, it's less about the actual sort of marking a historical place and more about showing a photo and the change in its location. And it's I know that's very nuanced, but that's the project. So the first photo that James has up is, I'm sure will make Brian happy, hope, is the St. Joseph's Convent building. This photo is likely from 1970, which is probably was taken because the school closed in 1970, and they likely moved out in that year. And then, but it's before the fire that led to its demolition. And then there's a pole. We're all good for that one. It's a really remarkable building and some really great architecture that corner is definitely missing. So I think it'll be a nice addition to that corner. The next one, James. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. This is the construction of City Hall. This photo is part of a really big series for the cornerstone laying at City Hall in 1936. It's likely that this guy was standing on this pole or post during the cornerstone laying. So quite an interesting gentleman, regardless of his health and safety, or disregard perhaps of health and safety. Although I think the picture makes the pole look taller than it is. It's probably not that tall. So great photo. And then on the secondary layer on the blog, we'll have more photos of the cornerstone laying and some of the construction and that kind of thing, the opening as well. There's another photo in the series that's taken very similarly of a different worker that shows, it's one of my favorite photos. It shows the Welland House Hotel sign way up in the background. It's just the angle of the photo. This one doesn't capture it, but the angle of the photo on the other one does. It's backwards because it reads the other way, but you can see it. It's really neat. It just shows you how tall the Welland House was. So yeah, again, this goes with sort of picking a little bit more interesting, quirky photos that we normally wouldn't see. And the challenge with City Hall is that there aren't the best poles around for most of the pictures. Traditional pictures of City Hall are taken from the corner, but there aren't good vantage points. You'd sort of have to stand in the street, which is not great for reading a panel to get those photos. So this one will be closer to 110 James, across the street from the James Street entrance of City Hall. Next one. Okay, another one.
I've got it.
This is the corner of St. Paul and Bond Street. If you know St. Paul and Bond Street, it is kind of like somebody painted over this scene today. There's a big mural on the building behind the gas station in this photo. The gas station building is likely added to or a little bit different, but it's kind of a similar profile, more 1960s than 1930s. But it's almost the same, but it's different. So it's a really interesting comparison, very easy to tell. Streetcar tracks are always a big hit with these panels as well, because it reminds people of the changes to public transit. This particular corner was an Imperial gas station from 1923 to 1960. I think it was in Esso as well, which is the same thing if you can track corporate changes. And then it became a food market, the Balsam Food Market in 1965. And today it has a much more groovy 1960s profile, and I think it's a barbershop today. So lots of different changes to not only this corner, but also sort of how people use downtown, which is really cool. Okay, next photo. Oh, okay, so the YMCA was first on my list, and when I talked to you last time, it was there. So the YMCA is still on the list, but I found this great picture of all these kids exiting the YMYWCA in the winter time, coming out of a program. I think there's an adult up on the second little balcony up there, but from my brief look, I don't really see an adult, and I love that. I love that there's just a horde of children on the street. So this is a great photo, and like I showed before, there were a number of other photos of people using the building because the center of community activity from a variety of standpoints. So the additional photos will be on, including a photo of the whole building, because I know that this doesn't show the whole building, but will be on the secondary layer on the blog. And that's it. That's probably all we can manage in terms of budget, as I discussed last time. So I just want to give you that. We'll start working on design, and then we'll send around the panels when they're ready. We'll have a fairly quick turnaround to go to print to make sure it's in this budget year. But if anybody sees any glaring mistakes on our part, then we'll fix those. But when we send you the panels, they'll pretty much be in their final form to look at, and then we'll put them up in the spring. I hope everyone's okay with that. Pay for them now, but put them up in the spring just to save mine and Irene's fingers in the cold. It's very putting the signs up is very nimble work, requires fingers. So that's it for me.
Yeah, thanks,
and
Adrian.
there was a question later that if James, let me know when you want to get to the other question.
Yeah, we'll do this one first, and then Gail had some questions about the downtown signs that are getting replaced. Yeah. But yeah, we'll deal with this one, then we'll deal with the next one.
Sounds good.
The one
Mr.
thing
Chair, unfortunately, I have to go to another meeting, so I must apologize. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks, Carlos. The one thing that I noticed about the City Hall picture that you showed, I think in the background to that, you can also see the back end of the YMCA building.
Oh, probably.
So it's kind of a nice little, tie-in with this last picture. Yeah, that's the Y building in the back, I believe.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, small. It's interesting how the sight lines change over time. That's great. Great eye, Brian.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions about Adrian's presentation?
Awesome. Thank you again, everybody, for your suggestions. Very, very helpful.
Okay, so if we've got no questions or comments about it, then can I have a motion to receive Adrian's presentation? Maria? Okay, and all in favor?
I'm in favor.
Okay, thanks, Ollie. Okay, well, that's done. So item 7.4, Gail, your question about the downtown signs?
Oh, you're muted, Gail.
Sorry, I tried to be more quiet. I'm glad I was on mute because I took a phone call. Anyway, yes, as you all know, when I was driving to the library, or we were driving to the library, I saw a sign is being taken out clearly officially in the trunk of a man's car, and I wondered about it because it really threw me. I didn't know until James explained that this is the first step of refurbishment of, I guess, is it all the signs that are throughout this downtown core?
It's not all the signs. It's some of them, most of them are being redone because if you've walked by them recently in the last few years, they're in pretty rough shape from sun or graffiti or whatever. So these panels, just a little background, these panels
that's the one I saw.
These panels belong to the tourism department, and to my understanding, someone else might have a better memory, but to my understanding, they were put up about 20 years ago. They're about generally about history around, but they're also encouraging a walking tour. So they're sort of they're more of an interpretive side than a heritage designation marker. And the panels being replaced are very similar, but because the grant that paid for them, it was a tourism grant that was part of a larger project, and they were able to include the panel refurbishment into the grant. They include a little bit more about like today, what there is to do about downtown and tourism that way, and leveraging heritage as tourism. And then so the project's been going on for quite a while because it's part of a number of other projects that are included in the grant. It's a pretty I don't know how much money it is, but it includes a number of different projects. So I imagine that this one was kind of at the last on the bottom of the list to be completed. And as far as I understand, the gentleman in the car was the proprietor of Speed Pro, who is doing the work.
The proprietor of, I'm sorry, Speed
Pro, the sign company that's doing the work.
Okay.
Reprinting and reinstalling where possible. A couple of the poles have to be redone. There was one at the corner of Church and Geneva that was hit by a car and needs to be straightened up before the new panels put in. But yeah, I don't think all of them are happening. For example, there's one here at the museum that's quite large. It's right at the front of the parking lot before you get to the museum. That's the Welling Canals driving tour that's included in the series. Technically, it was put up at the same time. That one will be done later. They're all over the place as well. They're not just downtown. There's one at the cemetery. There's some in Yates Street. So they are generally being replaced. I don't know the schedule, but that's what's up.
Lorraine had put online a question. Now she's gone now. That last year, I think Justin, who was with our committee, our former committee, found one completely blanked out at the old what used to be the museum in Meriton. And I don't know what's happened to that one, but my concern about it is I'm very glad that they're being redone, is I do hope that our committee will receive some communication from the tourism department about what the new signs will say, so that we can have some look at the text before they actually go out. I say this because when we were developing the heritage pamphlet, and that started with the public and outreach committee on which James and Lorraine and I were on, and that we were hoping that our heritage pamphlet, which James did a lot of work on, would get out by Heritage Month, and it didn't, but it also was full of some grammatical and spelling errors, and so I'd like to just know that we can help, we can be part of the process, whether it's with the tourism or with Adrian, with you and the museum, on the wording of some of these things. Do you think we might be able to be of some assistance?
In this particular
yes, because most signs have
the signs were so the tech. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just that we all have history and heritage backgrounds. We know, what Church Street is. It's a street of churches, it's a street of religion and that kind of thing. I just would hate to see the new signage be brought so up to date that it really doesn't really have historic interest to it and becomes more of a current woke sign.
I don't know about the detail of what what that particularly means, but I can tell you.
Okay, I'm not even sure sometimes what
Okay.
woke is, but it is just the tourism department of the city that is doing it.
So the tours, it's a part of the tour. The signs belong to the tourism department. Kathleen and I contributed the historical elements to the signs, and
Okay.
they took on the design and the other things that were included on the signs. So it was a tourism project more than a heritage project.
Okay.
But the sign, they didn't want to eliminate the history from the signs. So the text, Kathleen and I contributed the history part of the text.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Was the plaque that was outside the Grantham Township office, is that one of the ones that's been removed?
It should be replaced. I don't know what the timeline is on it. Again, we're not managing this project. We just contributed the text. That's all I know about it.
Because that plaque was like, it was another one that was almost illegible.
Yeah, that's the trouble with the one at the keg is also like was probably set on fire at one point because it melted. So that's the trouble with plaques and signs, that they cost a lot of money, and then what happens to them 20 years down the line. So trying to make them as broad and accessible and design friendly and that kind of thing, so that we can keep them up to date as things, and clean and that kind of thing as things go on, is a priority for that. So
okay. Do we have any other questions for Adrian?
I'd like to ask one more thing. We used McGee Printing, or whatever the one on Niagara Street was, when we put up the sign for the air raid siren out in Carnahan Park, and it's completely different from these kind, and it was quite inexpensive to do that, and I don't know if that's even been considered by the city, or even if McGee is still in working. Did you know that, Adrian?
I don't, and again, we're not managing the project. We just contributed to the text. So
right.
I assume that tourism followed whatever procurement is necessary for
because
this project.
we did that when Kevin Blazowski was the heritage planner, and we followed Thorold, which is full of signs. We followed their lead by going to McGee, and it was really good. Anyway, thank you very much for that update.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks, Gail. I guess we need a motion to receive Adrian's information about this.
Yeah, that would be great. Seems like a simple one.
Why don't I make it then?
Why, Gail, thank you.
Okay.
So all in favor of receiving the information, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
done. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian.
Have a lovely evening, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
We don't have any business arising from the minutes. I don't think we've got any subcommittee updates to make. No items of correspondence. So I guess, James, did you want to say anything about the synagogue?
Yeah, I guess I could do that. I forgot about that actually. So just to let everybody know, so the synagogue on Church Street, we're going to be designating it sometime in the next year and a half, probably. They've requested it out of because it's their 100th anniversary in 2025. So as part of that, their congregation is I mean, I met with them 3 times and met with the entire congregation, and there's some people that we had to kind of educate on what does it mean to be designated and whatnot, but largely a lot of the congregation were in favor of designation. So we're going to work with them on this. One thing I wanted to stress with them was it's their building. This is their initiative, and I'd like them to kind of take some ownership on that, and kind of help us in terms of figuring out what the attributes should be. There were some concerns about, if the congregation one day were to merge with another congregation, are there elements of their building that they could bring with them? So we'll figure that all out. But it's going to be a collaborative process. So I'm not sure when that'll kick off. I'm actually meeting with them tomorrow, and we're kind of going to talk about first steps. And yeah, well, hopefully in 2024 it'll be something that we'll work on. We have a lot of properties next year that we're going to be individually designating, and we'll fit this one in with all the others. So it's a good news project. It's nice to have somebody come to us and want to be a heritage building, and yeah, it's a fantastic building. If you haven't been inside, it's the space, the actual synagogue space there is fantastic. It's really nice.
And I had just given them a letter of recommendation. They've got an application going out for a grant, I guess, to upgrade their library and some of their holdings, their equipment and whatnot. So we wish them luck with that application as well. Gail, you've got a.
Yes, I wanted to I sent you all an email earlier. You all got it about the closing of the CN bridge, right?
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah, that's going to have a huge impact on the businesses around there. Sadly.
But it won't be forever.
It'll be all winter.
Anyway,
can I just ask something before we end? Or I don't know if this is the time or if someone should make a letter, but I was speaking to a colleague, he's an ex Heritage member, friend, and he's got ask me a question about, here it goes again, the tree bylaw for heritage trees, that there's a 170-year-old butternut tree, and he's worried about it coming down and the developer building a parking lot. And he just asked are we ever going to think about a heritage tree inventory?
Yeah, so through the chair, so yeah, we don't have a heritage tree kind of bylaw or inventory right now. It's something that I know the group has talked about in the past. I think it's just been one of those things where we only have so many, there's only one of me here as well. And so, and trying to keep up with the amount of buildings that we've had to try to list over the last couple of years, and now Bill 23 and the Downtown Heritage District, it seems like the tree stuff seems to fall down my list of priorities, unfortunately. Not to say they aren't important, but it's just a lot of things to kind of juggle. So it is something, I mean, we could look into that in the future. I haven't come across a tree inventory at another municipality, so I maybe would have to reach out to some of my colleagues across the province and see how they manage such a thing. Because one of the nice things about dealing with buildings is people need building permits. And so if they do need a building permit, that's how I get flagged typically to have them come to our committee. And so it's a little bit different with trees because we don't have a tree bylaw, tree protection bylaw. And so I can't necessarily know that somebody isn't trimming their tree or doing something with it. So it's a little bit harder to manage, but I'd have to find out kind of what best practices are and come back to the group with that.
I know maybe about 10 years ago, John Bacher and I were working on a tree inventory. Now we did identify some heritage trees, but then again, nothing came of that. I know one municipality is Toronto that has they've designated some heritage oak trees, so that might be a place to start.
Yeah, I do recall from when I was there, I think the Maple Leaf Forever tree had just been damaged, and so it got turned into a whole bunch of different kind of benches and stuff like that. I do know of that tree, but I don't know of a program, basically, I guess, a municipal program that that's tried to protect a wide swath of trees. One-off trees are a little easier to do, but yeah, an entire inventory across the city might be a little more challenging. But I can reach out to, there's a Heritage Planners Network that I actually met with last week in person in Ottawa at a heritage conference, and we're always sending emails to one another because we're all trying to sort out things like Bill 23 and find out best practices and whatnot. So I can definitely circulate to the group and see if there's kind of best practices that I can bring here.
Andrew?
Yeah, I have a question, and I'm not sure if it should be asked now or outside of the meeting. You can tell me if it's something for discussion later. But I'm interested with the minutes that are distributed in terms of the meetings. It always records whether a vote has passed or not, and I would be very interested in seeing at least the final result of the vote referred to there. I don't know if it's just a matter of custom or there's a policy around it. But certainly today, the fact that there was a very close, a 5-5 vote, and for two reasons, I think it should be public record, but I also think that it can give some consideration for the councillors if something goes before them and they're on the fence about it. And they see that it passed, but only by one vote. That may affect their thinking on it. There also, frankly, have been a few that I've voted against that have passed, and I really would like to have my name on the minutes as having voted against it. And so if there's any way we can incorporate that as part of this, that's something I would like. Obviously the committee may have a different feeling, and the city may have a policy around it. But that's just my personal thoughts on it.
Yeah, through the chair, I personally don't have a problem with it, and I think it's a good point to make. Whenever an item does go to council, I make sure. So, for example, a demolition application, I do make sure to let them know what the vote was. But yeah, we have not made that a practice to do in our minutes. Alex, who's on the call, he always writes the first draft of our minutes. So, Alex, take note that he will need you to count some votes for this one. And yeah, we can make that a practice going forward. It's certainly not a difficult thing to do. And I have no concerns about it. I don't know if any other members do, but I think it'd be good practice to do.
I think it's an excellent idea, Andrew. As well, I have a final thing. I am interested in other advisory committees and task force, and I have been looking around for about a month, and I don't see that any of them have their recordings up at all. And I wondered why we have ours. Is the city not doing? Could you inquire as to why the accessibility committees don't have a recording up? Why the public art? Why just us? That's one question that I certainly have. I there should be some consistency or some communication as to why some and not others are on. And I know it's a bugbear about the oil fountain for you. I'm sorry, James. Can you find out how much from somebody how much it would actually cost for the next meeting, that we could just know? So you said it's way over $1,000, but is it 2,000? Is it 7,000? Is it what is it? And if it can't be done, can we have a replication?
Yeah, so through the chair, so I'll deal with each of these issues individually. So the oil fountain, so I'll have to confirm that I can mention the price to the group because it hasn't been approved. The budget for it hasn't been approved by council yet. It'll be in the upcoming budget for 2024. And I just don't know if, because it's not my project, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to tell you, yep, this amount is getting spent when council hasn't voted on that yet. So let me find out if I can get that information for you. And then
as to the videos.
Oh, the videos, yes. So most of the committees have moved to either an in-person or hybrid format. I don't know which ones have moved to strictly in person. I don't know which ones are hybrid. We're the only committee actually now that is, as far as I know, strictly online. And so that's why ours automatically always get posted to YouTube. If a committee is just meeting in person, the public would be able to come out to that meeting if they want to. So, and it's not filmed because of that. So right now we're in kind of this odd, I wouldn't say odd, it's a transition period, right? We're coming out of COVID where everybody was doing everything digitally. And our committee, often because we have consultants and architects and people coming in from out of town, it made sense to not have to have people drive down from Toronto, let's say, for a 5-minute meeting or a 10-minute hearing, right? It's just trying to be as efficient as possible, and I think this has worked well for our group, but every committee is kind of different, and that's what I imagine is the rationale for why some committees you're finding their YouTube videos and others you're not.
I'm not finding any but us. But anyway, okay, that's a good answer. Now I understand. Thank you so much.
And here I thought it was because we were really important.
Yeah.
we get about 15 to 20 views on YouTube every time, and I wonder how many of them are Alex just rewinding and refreshing, but we do get a few views at least every month.
I do know one person who's a regular watcher and a fan, so we do have one fan at least. And I thought it was because we were the most photogenic committee.
Oh yeah, there's that too. Yeah, and well spoken, right?
Yes, absolutely. We speak good.
Yes, I'm ready for my close-up now, Mr. DeMille. Okay, so if there's nothing else, then I guess our next meeting will be on November 30th. Same bat time, same bat station.
Yep.
So do I have a motion to adjourn the festivities for the day?
Sure.
Robert Speck, I saw your hand go up.
And thanks
Okay.
may I say thanks to all that send me emails, whether they want to hear from me or not. I really appreciate those people who tell me what they who are outspoken. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So I guess we have to vote on adjourning. All in favor?
Okay.
So it's 4:41 according to my clock on the wall. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at the end of the month.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks all.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.